Want to take you to another scene that you're looking at on the one side of your screen now. These are live scenes from outside the High Court in Johannesburg. We're showing that to you because in the last 20 minutes or so, Ntuthuko Shoba has been sentenced to life in jail for ordering the murder of his pregnant girlfriend, Tshegofatso Pule, in 2020. The details of that murder, almost too gruesome to bear. An 8-month pregnant woman shot and then hung from a tree at the order of a man who was her lover. She had, in the last hours before she was killed, been seen with him. And as you see now, her loved ones overcome with emotion. Let's listen.
Inside the court, hence the emotions that erupted. But I guess from here, it's for us to put this whole thing behind us, start mourning and start the healing process as well.
And you hung your head. I suppose we saw a lot of emotion and a lot of responses, but you were rather silent. What was going through your mind?
I'll be honest with you, this case took a toll on me. Personally, professionally, emotionally, everything in me, it took a toll on me. So I was fighting this thing with every beat of being that is in me. I guess I'm not saying my family members wouldn't have been disappointed had this case gone the opposite direction, but I know the emotions I would have went through had this thing gone the opposite direction. Yes.
At this point, what would you like to say to Ntuthuko Shoba's family? Of course, he goes to prison, but they go back to society. And we've heard how there was no efforts really to come to the family to speak to you. Ntuthuko Shoba is the one that's said to have ordered a hit on Tshegofatso and not the family. Do you think that there's room for discussions?
No, not at all. They are very lucky as a family. It doesn't matter when Ntuthuko they take him to which prison, they'll still have a chance to see him. They'll still have a chance to talk to him and reflect on what has happened with him. We are left with a lot of questions that we still want answers from, and it's only Ntuthuko that can answer those questions. So for their family, they are lucky he's still alive, and they'll be able to see their son for just as long as they are alive.
You speak about how this matter has taken a toll on you, but perhaps to other uncles out there who obviously have females in their families, what would you like to say? You've been through this journey from start to finish. You've supported the family. You've been their anchor through it all.
They need to master the art of being together as a family. Notice even the little difference that you might see on your loved ones. I think had we noticed that Tshego was going through emotional turmoil when she was still involved with Ntuthuko, especially during the time where she was vulnerable during her pregnancy, maybe we could have avoided this. So they must learn to talk. They must learn to be closer to their nieces and nephews. But above all things, they must also show them love.
Tumi, how do you feel about the incredible public interest in this story? People have been following this, others supporting you as a family, I guess sending you messages, the outpouring support, but also just the public interest.
I don't think we could have done it without that support, honestly speaking. It was tough. At some point, it was even difficult just to get out of the house to come to court because you wouldn't know what stance Ntuthuko is going to pull. But through the public support, through faith-based organization, all the NGOs, political parties that have been supporting us, it gave us courage to continue. And it's not only the public, guys. I also want to take this moment and thank you guys as a media. You have no idea the role that you guys have played and the influence that you have made to this case to be this far. Also thank the police officers who handled this case with care, and the NPA, the way they handled this case. But I think your power as a media played a huge role as well.
Do you hope that police, I mean, there's so many gender-based violence cases. Do you hope that each and every case that is like this is treated with the same kind of...
Absolutely. Yeah. It should. It should treat it with the same sense of agency that this case should be treated with. I think within the last 2 years, a lot has been achieved from this case. From the conviction of Mr. Malephane, and now the conviction and the sentencing of Mr. Shoba. And those were well-deserved sentences that the court could mete out to any other perpetrator out there.
And if he decides to appeal, I mean, are you ready for that emotional ride again?
For all intents and purposes, he can appeal until he's blue. I don't think he'll get out.
One other question, Madam Condolences. Okay. What is one thing or two things, beautiful things that you will hang on as a family in remembrance of Ms. Pule?
So even brought our family even more closer. In the process, we realized that even us as a family, we can't live without each other. But the most important thing that the experience of Tshegofatso has brought to our family is the fact that we need to care about where each member is. Even when we gather together, the moment we depart, we still want to call each other to find out if they've arrived safely, because that is the lesson that was hard learned. We took it for granted that when Tshegofatso was going to Ntuthuko Shoba, she'll return, and she never returned.
Can you maybe, Mr. Katake, just take me back to those months ahead of June the 4th, which was the last time Pule was seen alive. She was 8 months pregnant. I can imagine the kind of preparation as a family that you had already done. Can you maybe take us back to those moments and just how heartbreaking it is, because it wasn't just Pule that you lost, but you also lost the baby.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's so unfortunate that the legal system doesn't recognize the fetus. As long as the fetus doesn't live outside its mother, but they don't recognize. But it's a tough moment, because just this morning we were talking that she could have turned 2, baby Kamala. And it's tough, guys. I don't want to lie to you. It's tough. I think I'm not wishing this to any worst enemy of mine. Yeah. Thanks.
That is Tumisang Katake, the uncle of Tshegofatso Pule. They're reflecting and giving us reaction to that sentence that was handed down by acting Judge Stuart Wilson earlier on, refusing to deviate from the prescribed minimum sentence. As you can see, the family, some of them have even gone out. Emotional scenes Tembegile played out after that sentence was handed down by the judge. There were expectations, of course, of nothing less than a life sentence, and it's quite interesting that it was also recorded in the judge's, sentence, how there's also been a lot of interest in this case, but how the fact that Tshegofatso was pregnant at the time is in itself an aggravating circumstance. Because at the time she was 8 months pregnant. The judge also, Tembegile, reflecting on her vulnerability, not only emotionally, but also saying Tshegofatso was vulnerable physically. She also longed for care, and she found that care in Ntuthuko Shoba, who exploited that. The judge going as far as saying this killing is the worst of its kind in this, also, going as far as looking at the issue around, you'll remember yesterday there were arguments around a deviation of sentence, and that there should be a parity of sentence. The judge saying that if you look at both cases, there shouldn't be a deviation of sentence. There shouldn't be a parity. In fact, Muzikayise Malephane tendered a guilty plea, and of course subsequently led to the arrest of Ntuthuko Shoba. It took about 20 minutes for him to go through that particular judgment, but in the end handing down life imprisonment.
Linda Mnisi, stand by for us because we're going to continue with our coverage of this breaking news story for viewers just joining us. Ntuthuko Shoba sentenced to life imprisonment for ordering the murder of his heavily pregnant girlfriend Tshegofatso Pule in 2020. Linda, I hope you're still hearing me as we show these pictures now of people gathered outside the High Court here in Johannesburg. Let's take a few steps back, go back to 2020, winter of that year, when news broke that the body of a murdered pregnant woman had been found in the Roodepoort area, and how we got to this point. Okay, I'm not sure if Linda Mnisi, a reporter in the High Court in Johannesburg, is able to hear me. Linda, there you were.
Camera operator, but it was indeed in 2020 when
By the way, just to explain what's going on, we're having a bit of a delay, a bit of a connectivity issue there with Linda Mnisi because he's making his way outside the High Court in Johannesburg. We'll stay with this picture. Hopefully it's stable enough until Linda reaches this point, because a few minutes ago, in fact, there was quite a tense scene. It appeared to have been a clash of some sort between two groups. Not too clear who, but I did recognize one of the women who was in tears and seemingly quite enraged. She is one of the people who've been with the family since we got news during the winter of 2020 that Tshegofatso Pule had been found murdered. This heavily pregnant woman, it would then emerge that her murder had been ordered by her boyfriend, Ntuthuko Shoba. Shoba at the time was a married man, and what we learned through the trial was that he wanted his pregnant girlfriend murdered because he did not want news of his affair getting out and the fact that he'd indeed now gone ahead and impregnated her. But what the judge has said, as Linda Mnisi was telling us, is that the fact that he ordered her killing at a time when she was pregnant is an aggravating circumstance. Yesterday, an argument during mitigation or aggravation of sentence, Shoba's legal team basically tried to explain his actions as having been the actions of a man that had been out of character. But the family even then was telling Linda Mnisi outside the hearing yesterday that what they wanted was the harshest possible sentence, which they found to have been fitting for a man who killed a 28-year-old woman at the prime of her life. And in fact, in speaking to us over these 2 years, Tshegofatso Pule's family has said that they would have raised the child on their own, even if Shoba, as the father, had not wanted to be part of the baby's life. So this now is the group of people who've been by the Pule family side throughout this trial.